Let's get started. It gives me great pleasure to hand over to this morning's real keynote speaker instead of the amateurs that were on beforehand. Greg Lotko, General Manager of the Mainframe Division for Broadcom, and I'd just like to say again, thank you for all of the great support you've given us at this year's conference. So, Greg, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mark. So, Mark and Steve hopped up here and really good discussion, very entertaining. And at the end of it, they said, hey, we're just the warm-up act for the next presentation. I don't know about that. I think I'm the cool down or the glide path after that experience. So we're delighted to be here. Broadcom loves GSE. You get the support, all of you, because you deserve it. You're doing the heavy lifting in the world. We all know how important this platform is. And I'm sure some of you have figured out, stopping by our booth, that we're doing a lot of stuff here around racing, right? So you're going to see this theme. You're going to see that through this talk. And, there should be a sense of urgency. We talked about the importance of security and protecting data on the platform. There's an importance in the world for resiliency. We want all services, all capabilities, all data to be always on, to be always available. So we do need to race towards resiliency. Good. You didn't walk away with that huge clicker. Yeah, I think everybody in the audience could figure out how to use this. And it is amusing that the white one that's the pointer is shaped like a teardrop. I think that's to imply if you pointed at anybody's eyes, they're gonna cry. So resiliency is incredibly important. And what you're gonna see, again, you're gonna see cars all over this. Was it you or Stephen that said that you liked car analogies? They're really good. Yeah. So I will tell you, my team says every time I use an analogy other than a car analogy, it fails miserably. So when they get up to about here with me using car analogies, I purposely start using other analogies and I get the groans. So dating isn't good, shopping isn't good, none of those work for me. But resiliency is absolutely imperative to all of us, but it has to do with a few things, right? If you think about resiliency, the best way to be resilient, the best way to handle an issue is to not have an issue in the first place. So there's a thought process through this. So number one, the best way is to not have issues at all, to prevent them. Now, we don't always do great at that, right? And we don't always do it all the time. So inevitably, we do have issues, right? So when that happens, when we get to that next step, you want to minimize the impact of those issues. So realizing that it's gonna happen, you say, okay, how to make the impact, how do I make the pain as small as possible? But that then says, okay, I did have an impact, something happened. So the last step, if you weren't able to avoid it, if you were able to minimize the impact, now you have to think about accelerating the recovery. How do you get back to what normal is? All of this is important. And I want you to think about it, when you think about it in your shop, as you're on your journey to greater and greater resiliency, it's not just what have you done and where are you on that journey. Have you thought about it in each of these stages? Because if all you think about is that I'm just going to avoid it, we're never going to have any issues. Oh my God, when it happens, when it hits the fan, it's hard to clean it up. Now, I'm gonna go through a theme here as we talk about each of these areas. So I'm gonna start you off with an analogy. We'll talk about cars. We'll talk about racing. That for me, that'll be the most enjoyable part. Then I'm gonna relate that to IT so that we can have that discussion. I'll bring it down a little closer to the truth and what our daily lives are, but I'll keep it at a high level. But then to make it real, to think about what's going on in your shops, I need help for that. So I'm going to bring up Mick Roach. He's the head of mainframe platform at NatWest, and he's the one who's going to deliver the real content here. So please join me up here, Mick. And we're going to try to not fall off this stage. Now, we've been told from a photograph perspective not to stand behind the mic. We got to be big. We got to be expressive, right? You know, there you go. All right. So let's make this real now. We've been talking about resiliency. Can you talk about NatWest? You know, introduce NatWest and yourself, and then talk a bit about what this all means to you guys.
I will do. Thanks. Morning, everyone. And look, Jeff, I'll try and do the racing theme.
I'm Greg.
Greg, sorry.
It's okay.
Very good. I was Jeff. Greg, I'll do. I said that earlier as well.
This is Mike.
Greg, I'll try and do the racing theme, but next time we'll work on a football theme, maybe. But we'll do the racing one.
And when we do that, we mean football?
Oh, no, English football.
Oh, gotcha.
We'll do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, morning, everyone. My name's Mick Roach. I'm from NatWest Bank. Been with the bank probably, well, just over 30 years. I actually started with Mark Wilson many years ago. I won't go into those stories. We'll save them for later. But yeah, I started in the installation area, SMPE, all that kind of stuff, SysProg sort of stuff. And then I've worked through storage was a speciality for a period, and then worked through a number of teams and looked after the mainframe platform about the last 10 years. And it's great to see so many NatWest colleagues here as well. Yeah, cool. Well, look, it's amazing, actually, nearly one row, all NatWest. So that's amazing. So
they're very resilient.
Oh, they're very good.
Because you should have seen them in the bar last night.
And I might be wary about the heckling. But just to say, yeah, resilience, I guess, you know, we're a financial institution. We could have a debate amongst all the banks how much of the UK economy we support. But obviously, we're pretty fundamental to the UK economy. We support the key services, you know, the ATMs, the point of sale, you know, everything that, you know, the UK economy in terms of finance, payments, goes through the systems. And just to give a feel for it, so the mainframe platform, even though we've listened to these debates over many years about things moving off the platform, we've still got over 400 services run on the mainframe. We've got all the important business services dependent on the mainframe. So we're pretty key to everything. And obviously, I'll throw in the other stats that we're 3% of the data centre footprint, even though there's a lot of other kit in our data centres. You know, fundamentally, we're 3%. We run that with 3% of the power. So we're still pretty key to actually the engine room to the bank in terms of everything that runs. There's quite a number of threats at the moment. I think we talked through that in terms of, you know, the global threats, you know, in terms of cyber threats, the security threats. So actually, more than ever, we need to be on top of resilience. And, you know, I think we need to, you know, we've done a lot of great stuff. I guess the examples I'm going to give today, when we get there, we'll get there. But, you know, I'll give a few examples. Not rocket science, but it's just how we keep improving it.
Yep.
And it is that speed is pretty key. So I'll probably stop there because I'll go into our
all right. And you said you're 3% of the expense of overall IT? And no, 2% is their salary, one's yours?
No, I can get that stat. We're 7%. We're 7% of the overall.
See, he told you guys 3%. The other 4 is his salary.
No, yeah, something like that. Yeah, if only. I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. I don't know, Mark may be able to validate my statement on the dark web, right?
Just get me laptop head.
We'll see about that. So, all right. So let's talk about proactive problem identification, right? And if we think about racing, they are proactive, right? They don't just show up with any old car. I don't know how many of you have been outside and seen the Formula One car that's parked out there. You can tell a ton of engineering went into it. One guy, by the way, could push that car. We give him a little bit of help getting up the hill up into there. It's very light. A ton of engineering goes into that. So they are proactive, right? They think about not only what can help them succeed and go fast, but it's also thinking about problems. It's thinking about the race ahead. So they don't just show up at the track and kind of hop on and go, oh, gee, how many lefts and rights are there here? Where do I turn? They study the track. The drivers study the track. The team does. They're setting up the car. You know, we have a simulator in our booth. If anybody wants to actually, at the end of this, I'll tell you where we stand on the leaderboard. I know where I stand. But they study the track. There's a lot of work that goes into it ahead of time before they show up because they want to be prepared. They want to figure out exactly what's going to happen, predict, and try to be ready for all that. And then they're also thinking about tire management. I mean, I don't know how many of you actually watch racing, but in Formula One, I believe it's 4 different types of tires they have at every track. So they have soft tires, they have medium tires, they have hard tires, and they have rain tires. And you think, well, okay, this is pretty obvious. If it's going to rain, you put on rain tires. Well, you know, the rain tires are really slow if the track isn't wet. It's not just about being moist. It's about whether or not the rain is falling and whether or not you need that to help you to avoid the hydroplaning. There's a whole strategy around when to change tires and what compound you want relative to how hot the track is, what adhesion level you're going to get. So just like you folks, where you don't just get that next change and slam it in there without thinking about security or anything else, a lot of planning, a lot of proactive thought about what problems might happen and what solutions and how you can address things. Now, this is a lot like IT. It's what we all do. It's what we think about in our environments. And you in your shops, you prepare for challenges. You think, hey, I don't want anybody to hack my system. So you apply security protocols. You think about, you know, how are you going to develop a code and, you know, what software am I installing? Am I looking at a bill of materials? Am I trying to check the provenance of this to avoid issues? And you step back and you look at the big picture. As you're installing things into your environment, you're thinking, okay, what connectivity do I need? What interactions are there going to be? Who's going to need access to this? And who don't I want access to this? So there's a lot of parallels for the preparation. And of course, I mean, I'm jumping to the conclusion. There's a huge payday, right, for you at the end of each no, I guess that's just the racing analogy. They get huge money. But all right, so let's make this real.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what this all means for NatWest.
Yeah, again, you know, that track's getting ever more complicated all the time.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the environment.
They say more technical.
Yeah, technical, yeah, definitely more technical. And in terms of, you know, applications used to sit on the mainframe, we'd work and we'd sit together and we'd work through if there's an issue. Now, there's an end-to-end sort of situation where obviously a lot of it, the front end, you know, I guess if I brought it real in terms of our mobile banking app, you know, with front ends off in a third party, the engine room's back in the mainframe. So
hopefully that's not an issue and you're prepared for it. We got, okay.
Right. Not us, yeah. Good. So
that would be a different problem. In the middle of it, he goes, I got to get this. I'm out of here. Oh crap.
It might save me. But no. So actually, we've got a more complex environment. So we kind of need to work together. And for us, it's the configuration. So it's really, in terms of that configuration, is really knowing for the services what components are involved. You know, from us in terms of the mainframe, all the aspects of the mainframe, the network, and who else could be a player in the issues, and we can get to that fairly quickly. So in terms of, we need to get through that and kind of identify issues really quickly. We actually do a lot of proactive planning, you know, for where we expect peak days, you know, generally the last Friday of the month, peak day monitoring. And so we've got dashboards.
That's because people get paid and they all go to the pub to drink.
Whatever. Mobile banking app gets used to an awful lot. That's the one. And so, you know, we've done a lot in that space, which is really good. We've got a really good dashboard there so we can see indicators. We trend it back, you know, over every peak month. So we can see, are we in a normal sort of peak? Is it okay? Is anything exceptional? Is there anything we need to start looking at? Planning maybe, you know, make some changes, any additional capacity. So we do a hell of a lot of that. Again, it used to be quite manual. You know, we've got a lot of LPARs to get across to actually just check that every LPAR's fine. So we actually automated that. A lot of that data collection, I know particularly in the DB2 space, is now automated, so we can collect all the stats. And actually, the good thing is, you know, our technical teams can actually, they've got the information at hand and they can have time to think and go through it. and just and again and that helps us plan going forward in terms of trending and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in terms of that tooling. I guess in the future, I guess we'll get to AI looking at that data as well, you know, in terms of giving us a feel for it. But yeah, we're pushing the envelope on it.
So you're kind of thinking about what are the patterns that I've seen before.
Yeah.
Let me prepare. You know, I know at the end of the month this thing is probably going to happen, but then you're also starting to think about the unexpected. Okay, what if something else happens? And a lot of times automation helps us with this, right? So if you think about in racing and in driving, you know, using automation, using simulation, looking at historical data, being able to model, well, what if I would have reacted differently? You know, thinking about sitting on the simulator in the other room, well, hey, what if I brake a little earlier? What if I brake a little later? If I turn in, what if I clip this apex and let it go up on the rumble strip? You try, you attempt, you practice, you go through all these things. You use the historical data that you learn from your simulations as well as actually while you're on the track to see what was better, and then you're always hunting for the next improvement. I don't think any of the financial institutions in here strive to be number 3 or 4 or stay in whatever position they're in. They're always trying to get each other's customers, and those that go to the track, I mean, there are some teams that just want to move up in the standings, but I think Max Verstappen is now thinking about, you know, not, you know, can I win this race? He's thinking, can I win every race? How much can I gap the field? It's actually gotten a little bit boring, right? Because Max is you're a big Max Verstappen fan, huh? There you go. It's a good year for you. They're a good couple of years, right? I mean, didn't he like win the championship after like the 3rd race or something? He had accumulated enough points, yeah. So the funny thing is, I do think from Max's perspective and from your perspective in your own shop, there is a really good parallel to that. So Formula One racing has gotten very boring, right? Because Max keeps winning, and I think boring is good, right? Max is like, well, if it's bored and they hate me, this is good. Think about your job. If it's boring, if nothing's going wrong, if things are not happening and things are happening the way they should, boring is good. But you also need to anticipate. You need to think about what you're going to do, right? So anticipating what's going to happen, these teams spend a lot of time looking at weather forecasts. They look at the weather forecast and you think, okay, well, how hard is this? It's either going to be rain or not. And, you know, if you're in Silverstone, it's going to rain, right? So it's a tough job, and they get paid a lot of money for this. Actually, I don't think it rained this year. I think it like drizzled for a little bit during one of the practices, right? And then when you actually got to the race, it didn't rain. But it's more than that. You have to think about temperature. I mean, every once in a while, I think there was one time about 2 or 3 years ago, the sun came out in the UK, and there's no sun.
No way.
You think I'm joking? Like, you know, but the sun comes out, it heats up the track, and they have to think about which tires are they going to use, and each team gets the same number of each tire compound. So it is how they play out and how they do this. So there is then a lot of automation. I mean, you look at these people that are sitting at these big pit boxes, and there's computer screens all over the place. They are running models and simulations all the time. Honestly, I'm more of a NASCAR fan. I think that's the American thing. You can beat and bang and hit and just keep going. But they're modeling, you know, what kind of fuel consumption I get, and have there been, what's everybody doing as a pit strategy, and everybody around you is doing something different. So you're modeling always what's going to give you the edge, just like in our businesses. And if you think about what's going on in your IT environment, you are doing everything you possibly can to prevent business disruptions. You don't want that on-track incident. You don't want people, you know, we talk about having a slow pit stop or a slow tire change or making a mistake. You don't want somebody to come in to take money out of their account and they get too little. I think you think it's worse if they get too much. But I mean, there is that problem. And then you want to maximize the efficiency. I mean, Does your boss ever come to you and say, oh, come on, just spend about 10 or 15% more this year?
Not every time.
Right. I mean, they all want us to be more effective and efficient. So we're always working on that. We're always analyzing how things are performing. We're always figuring out how can we have transactions and processes flow more smoothly. So go ahead, make it real. I've done my driving.
Well, I should get a few of these up to talk through automation. But yeah, because I'm going to use a few of their examples, Again, it's kind of like you say, so as well as having the environment to maintain and a lot of transactions, on a peak day we see about 800 million transactions going through. We have also, just by coincidence, we have roughly 800 changes per month in terms of, and that's just the mainframe estate. That's not really.
You guys get paid like $1 million a change?
Yeah, something like that. But we have a lot of change going through. Some of that's small, in terms of batch changes, config changes. But a lot of it, can be quite big. Big upgrades that we've just been through, and so there's a lot of change going through whilst we're maintaining all that all that throughput and processing. So in terms of automation, we've got some common changes that we're looking at the moment. We're using Ansible, working closely with our partners, with the vendors. So we're looking at automating RACF administration. That's quite a key piece of work. A lot of manual activity, so we're automating that.
There's alternatives to RACF, I hear.
Yeah, I believe so. We'll have a chat about that. So in terms of just removing some of that work, obviously making sure then it's successful. There's the manual activity, speeding up the delivery. We're actually certificates. Again, we manage thousands of certificates. This is good. We manage thousands of certificates, and again, we need to automate that. Again, that's a manual repetitive task. Yep. So there's a lot of that. And I guess the other part is back to that, what we said about the dashboard. We automate the collection of the statistics. We got, same as, pretty much all the other large financial institutions. We've got a large, complex environment, say, 17,000 KICS regions and stuff like that. So, if you're looking for one bad transaction, you kind of need some tooling to help you go through. I don't know, that's happening. So
he's having a lot of trouble with that wire.
I know, so you need some tooling.
We need some preventative action.
Yeah, that's certainly a problem. So we need some tooling to actually spot those things and identify them. So again, that's certainly a big focus area.
It's interesting. I mean, when you think about that, there's a ton of change going on, but just like Max, right? You want the same result. There's a ton of change going on all the time, but you want maximum performance and you want to win, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all this change going on to be competitive and ahead, to perform better, but to be more protected and to deliver a better result. Really, really, really cool. All right, so speaking of, we have planned changes and we have unplanned changes. So you're going to be my resident F1 expert here. I actually don't remember. So every race they're required to pit at least once, right? Are there some where they have to pit twice or no? It's always once, right? And they took fueling out because they were catching too many of the pit crew on fire? Yeah. So, I mean, think about that. That was an unplanned incident. You usually don't want to cook the pit crew. So they came up with a solution for that. They used bigger fuel tanks so that the fuel could go all the way to the end of it. But there's plan changes, so think about this. Every team has to pit and has to change tires at least once. Now, if you look at the distance, and I talked about, you're looking at the temperature, you're looking at the weather conditions, whether or not it's raining or not. Some teams do pit more than once. Some teams will pit twice, depending on the distance. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody pit more than twice other than when they had an on-track incident. But they plan for everything, right? I mean, they have extra nose cones that are in the pits. It's all about figuring out how to maximize what you're doing. But it goes beyond just the car. It also goes into the drivers. And, I had the honor to be in the Williams paddock and host some customers. By the way, if you can get it past compliance in your organization and you'd like to go to Silverstone next year, give me a shout. We might be able to hook you up. But we tried. So they're focusing on the car and they're focusing on everything they can do with that. But there is the human element. Just like we have people hacking in, just like we have people that are trying to perform their day-to-day job, they're always working on the driver's fitness and their reaction time. Now, So they go in the driving simulator and they're trying to get a faster and faster time. They're doing that so that they can also learn the track. They're doing a much better job than I am on looking at their caloric intake and their diet and their exercise regimen. They actually have in the paddock the exercises that some of the exercises that the drivers do. They have this thing called a BATAC challenge, and there's these lights that you can see with your peripheral vision, and you got to kind of smack them, and it's to get your reaction time. I've managed to score close to half the number that they can hit in like 60 seconds. I can hit, not good. But they also have the reaction time challenge on how fast can you release the clutch. So when you go to take off, that, by the way, I blew them away. I think I just got lucky. I'm never going to do that again. And I did beat the Williams time, both drivers, in the simulator. I will tell you, though, if you approach the leaders of the team and you tell them, hey, I've beaten your drivers in the simulator, I've beaten your drivers on the clutch reaction time. One of them has qualified 20th. There's only 20 in the field. And you ask them, will they put a 57-year-old rookie in the car? They unfortunately say no. But I did talk a bit about also preparing for the on-track incidents. When they show up in the pit for every race, they actually have 2 completely new nose cones set there. Because think about it. I mean, if you're going to get in an accident, what's most frequent to happen is you're going to be following somebody really close. You're going through the line. You're trying to pass them. And you might just misjudge a little. And if you break one of those little foils off, it's really, really going to ruin your day. We think about that in IT, right? I mean, we're thinking about plan changes and unplanned changes. So when you've got a change that's coming up on the weekend, hopefully, I mean, if you were here from Mark's session, hopefully your teams do think about security, right? I mean, you think about, all right, what's going in, who needs to have access, how are we going to roll this in, how are we going to ensure that we rolled in the right product version or capability, how are we going to sync our LPARs, and how are we going to move it forward? But you're also thinking about unplanned. Oh my God, I find out there was a hyper or I had an issue. You know, who am I going to need to get on a bridge? Who's going to react to this? Where am I going to have my test regions? Where am I going to fail over and drive capacity to react to something? I mean, we all go through the plan, and then we all know plans change, right? So you have to be thinking about unplanned. Go ahead, make this real.
Right, we'll try. But in terms of the plan changes, obviously that's where our test environments come in. They're quite, significant that we've got our test environments as close to production. I know we had a discussion yesterday. We don't have the same size and scale, but we try and make it.
IBM would like you to.
Yeah, I believe they would. Maybe they could offer it to us. But so we actually try and do that testing. So it's really key, that testing that we do. And we do a lot of testing in terms of getting through that, getting our development teams in, going through it. And we've got to be really strict in terms of issues there, knowing whether it's a new problem, whether it's something that we expect, So it's that discipline to actually go through those test environments. Mm-hmm. And again, that's where automation comes in, to actually automate that in terms of all that testing, get through those environments. Again.
Right, because we know if you hit an issue and you're moving a workload, there's certain things that got to be brought down, certain things that got to be brought up, and there's no reason to have to recreate that manually each time, right? So you can actually test part of the unplanned.
Yeah, definitely. And then look, and the key test for us, same as everyone, a disaster recovery test. That's where we swap sites and again we close everything down. We actually move the critical services. Obviously, we can't take an outage, so we move them across. They have minimum outages, but then we actually close the systems down. And again, that used to be a bit slower, in terms of some manual responses, but that's all been really automated now. So, just for instance, we closed each LPAR down in about 10 or 12 minutes. And then we start bringing them up the other side, in terms of moving for site swap. So that's really moved on.
Bringing them down faster. You pull the plug.
Yeah.
You go like...
That's the unplanned testing, yeah. So we could move on to that. But so no, in terms of the planned testing, we're quite good. But it's back to your comment before. We used to have a senior technician work with us, and after a disaster recovery event, if it all went well, he'd be really upset because he said we didn't learn anything tonight because it went really clean. But obviously, we were generally okay with it. So that's in the plan. Like you say, the unplanned, yeah, that's tough. You know, we've been going. I'm just trying to think of recent examples. We've done a big kicks upgrade recently and rolled that through. And again, 17,000 kicks regions. But inevitably, there's a lot of the applications that have been there quite some time. You know, rules have been tightened up with kicks 6.1, and there's a few anomalies that we found along the way. But, you know, the kicks team are quick to identify that. We know what's changed. We know what needs to be backed out, you know. So we kind of, when you're rolling it across the estate, that sort of stuff is hard to identify and test when it's developer code that's been there a long time and you have to be certain sets of conditions to actually hit it. But again, that's where the best thing we can be is prepared and ready to automate the back out and get these things backed out really quickly.
Very good. Very cool. All right, so resiliency goes way beyond just the code. I mean, I think we all think about resiliency in terms of products and capability and changes or modifications that were put in the code, but resiliency also goes to all of you, right? I mean, there's been a lot of jokes up on stage about the young folks and where they were sitting in the room or whether or not they showed up or all that kind of stuff. But I mean, realize the younger folks are our resiliency, the future of this platform. And many of us, more senior, we'll put it that way, more senior folks had the benefit of earlier in our careers getting fabulous mentoring and training. I mean, if we think back how many people spent time with us teaching us about the platform and wanting us to be successful, it was their passion. It was the thing that ran their business. It was the thing that they had poured their life's work into. And I hope, I know on our team, our more junior, our younger folks are seeing that from senior leaders. Take them under your wing, teach them, you know, answer their questions, and realize that they also have a hell of a lot to teach us. And I know everybody's like, oh, that's a nice soundbite. It's a nice thing to say. But for all you folks in the room who are more senior in your careers and you're like, oh, these young whippersnappers have nothing to teach me, think back 20, 30, 40, 90 years ago. When you started out and you were on the other side of the equation, you know in your heart that you taught some of those people that were training you new ways to do things, better ways to do things, maybe more effective and more efficient. I remember early in my career, I had to replicate a set of algorithms or reports, and I totally rewrote it. And the guy, we got to a code review, and he was furious with me. Now, I was a typical young person, and I had put it right into system tests before I had done my code review. Oops. And in the middle of being chastised, my customer, the business side, walked in and said, oh my God, Hank, you know, what did you do with that latest report? And he's like, yeah, I know there's a problem. I got to get him to rewrite it. He goes, no. I went to submit it, and I was going to have lunch and then get my afternoon coffee and look at the results, but I submitted it, and before I could get out of the office, the report completed. It ran 100 times faster than it ever did. So remember that we also taught the people that were teaching us, and make sure you stay open to letting the younger folks, the more junior people in the room, teach you. And then, you know, we have to make changes. We have to innovate. You know, Verstappen doesn't keep winning by just doing the same old thing. Although I do think there's chafe or countermeasures, or, you know, maybe he's got the smoke screen or tacks coming out of the back of his car. But we know that we have to change. We know that we have to advance. And you want to be able to do that with confidence. So don't go it alone. Make sure you have a partner, whether it be a partner within your organization or outside of your organization. Get another set of eyes. Get a couple sets of extra eyes. Have people look at what you're doing. And then leverage what's available to you in the tooling space. I mean, we talk about, you know, Mark, your soundbite about it's the most securable platform. It is also the most performant platform for transaction processing. most effective, most efficient. It's most of all of these things, but only if you apply the technology, only if you take advantage of the capabilities that you have available to you. And then do it all with resiliency in mind. All right, closing thoughts?
No, just in terms of that, the early careers, new people coming through into the platform, it was interesting. I think some of our very experienced technicians are very passionate, and it's just getting that balance. They're very passionate about doing the training and the coaching. I think our guys will agree. It's just getting the pace right. I remember I think it was last year's group, we had a little session, and then after about a couple of weeks, so how's it going, and they kind of said, well, I'm taking in probably 10% of kind of what I'm being told. And another person then said, well, I'm taking even less than that. Because it's just getting that balance right. But I think it is really good.
And then the more senior people went,
they're really passionate. They want to transfer the knowledge and get out. But no, they kind of are passionate about it. Again, everyone's bought into it. I think it's good and it is working together. And I think events like this are great. I hope we were very fortunate we could able to get some of our people along for the first time, and I hope they really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. I'd call you Mike again,
Thank you,
but
Jeff.
that would be too funny.
Great
You
guy.
did call me Jeff again. That was good. So look, don't go it alone. Take advantage of partners in the ecosystem. Take advantage of opportunities like this to talk to other companies. They've been on various parts of this journey, and that is part of the value of being here. Talking to other customers, talking to other businesses. Max still has a few things to learn. He's gotten much better at talking to the media and the crowd. I mean, they don't find him quite as annoying. But we all can continue to learn. And remember, be proactive. Don't wait for something to happen. Think through scenarios. Think about what you should be prepared for. Look at your history. Think about the types of things that have happened. Realize no matter what you do, there's going to be something that happens that's unexpected. So think about the strategies of if this or that. How do you minimize the impact? And then how do you accelerate to recovery? How do you get back up and running? I was at Texas, right? Max started 6th. I had a bet on the side with somebody of how long it would take him to get the first. I won. And then Hamilton did a different tire change, and it looked like, oh my God, Max isn't going to be able to do this. But then he reacted. He actually pitted a little earlier, so he got an advantage in his tires. And so they had a plan. The other drivers had a plan, but then based on the things that happened around them, they reacted. So, thinking about reaction time and the challenge that is out there, and I actually do want somebody to beat me. Not really, but we do have the simulator in our booth. We do invite you to come by and give your hand at it. I was joking, for all of you young folk in the room, you really don't want a 57-year-old old-time executive to have the fastest time on that leaderboard. Just to be clear, the closest is just inside 2 seconds behind me. I do hear, and this is the customer leaderboard. I'm not a customer, but the fastest time, not me, the fastest time will win, what do we got, a wireless set of headphones? Yeah, so the fastest time we'll get that, and I'm gonna sweeten the pot, which is gonna be a little less to charity for you, but we'll see what folks do. If anybody can legitimately because I've already, the way I got 2 seconds faster, I was in the executive track giving a presentation, and I got a text that one of our Broadcom team beat me by 100th of a second. And I was like, they lied. But it did get me to come back and go 2 seconds faster to lay down the gauntlet. If anybody can top my time, there's a $100 C note, a US $100 bill. I'll give it to you. If you can legitimately beat my time. Legitimately, I'm telling the people who are running the booth, visit our booth. be faster, have fun, enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you for being here.